So recently, while I was scrolling through hundreds of manga recommendations, there was one man, one name, and mainly one series which I simply could not get away from. This man here goes by the name of Boichi, and for those of you unaware of who Boichi is, allow me to fill you in on some of the details. Now, some of you will know him from a manga named Origin, or being the artist behind Dr.stone, or that time he drew some really weird Harry Potter hentai. But some of you will know him from a lesser known series that goes by the name of Sunken Rock. And to just give you a taste of what Sunken Rock is, it has pictures inside it that look like this, an angry teenage protagonist that looks like this, and because of his time drawing Harry Potter hentai, a lot of this. But it also houses what many believe to be one of the worst endings to ever grace the pages of a manga. However, with art and pictures like this, how could you possibly say no? And I know I may seem a bit overly enthusiastic, but this was only emphasized when I saw that it had recommendations from not just Scamboli, but Eyepatch Wolf, Masked Man, this French guy aggressively waving his spatula. Before I knew it, I was down a rabbit hole of Reddit threads, Facebook posts, YouTube videos, interviews, draw-alongs, panels, old hentai sketches. Suddenly, it was no longer a case of how much of a hentai-infused train wreck could Sunken Rock possibly be, but more of a case of how could something like this ever possibly fail? How could somebody spend so much time creating something so beautiful, ostentatious, breathtakingly bodacious, and as amazing as this, and then have the audacity then to write a subpar story? But if you've been around my channel for quite a while, then you'll know that is exactly what I do. Suffice to say, with everything online, all of this conflicting information coming from multiple sources, both trusted and untrusted, spotting that Sunken Rock is actually more like this and not actually like this, all of a sudden I had more than enough reasons to validate sinking hours into reading this man's works, and I mean all of them. I guess part of me wanted to prove the internet wrong, part of me wanted to know how good does Scamboli actually review, but more than anything I wanted to see if Boichi's writing would actually match the insane level of his art, and whether that ending is actually as bad as everyone else says. Would I find answers to everything that I needed, or be left wondering, Boichi, how the fuck did you do this? This is how things started out. In the early 2000s, a young manga artist began taking the underground manga scene by storm by drawing hentai. This was a young Boichi. This will also be very important later on in the story. Now, eventually the folks over at Young King Comics, the guys behind Trigun and Hellsing, got wind of what Boichi was doing and asked him, hey, do you want to give us a manga, but instead of, you know, people fucking, it's fighting and fucking. So after long discussions, deliberations and negotiations over how much panties and titties he could put into his manga, this is a true story by the way, Boichi would then sign the deal for his first ever Japanese serialized manga, and so Sunken Rock was born. And in doing so, Boichi would go on to create the most alpha, the most over-the-top, tremble-alone sweating induced joyride available in manga. So naturally the next question is, what happened? What's the deal? Simply put, Sunken Rock really starts out as a story about how this guy called Ken wants nothing more in the whole wild world than to boink this girl called Yumin. And for approximately 99% of the story, that is really fucking important. Moving on. However, one cigarette, 12 dozen roses, and what appears to become a broken heart on this sidewalk later on is all the evidence we need to know that Ken's day isn't going all that fucking well. You see, following the news that Yumin is only running off to become a police officer in South Korea, that, my friends, is the Korea without the short angry man and the pointy boom boom sticks. So as far as one young teenage boy is concerned, his life could not possibly get any worse. And what we see Ken go through here is a little something we like to call pain and suffering, which most people such as you and your friends, you know, will generally use as motivation to maybe go to the gym, or go for a run, or to maybe start a YouTube channel that doesn't fucking go anywhere. But in the unlikely event that your name is Ken, what most people do is simply not good enough for you. So with so much motivation, Ken decides to quit school and follow her all the way to South Korea, where he quickly learns that a hard dick and 27 volumes of Rosetta Stone ain't gonna cut it in the real world. And for the second time, within the opening 5 pages, we are presented with a man whose life truly does not look like it could possibly get any worse. But little does Ken know what's about to come next would change him forever. One day while walking wearing a semen-encrusted isekai sweatsuit, Ken not only has a chance encounter with Yumin, who's achieved just about everything that she has set out to do, but while enjoying a hot bowl of curry noodles, suddenly finds himself in a do-or-die situation with none other than the local fucking Yakuza gang. And it's really these sort of scenarios within a manga that a lot of us sitting at home truly believed that we would come in and save the day. But in actuality, I think I would have shit myself somewhere around here. But for Ken, this is when he finally takes charge and becomes the main character in his own life, as he emerges from the shadows with one right hand and a flying knee being all he needs to make his stand, before patting this old guy on the shoulder and then passing out in a drunken ball on the sidewalk. And as far as opening chapters go, Son Ken Rocks falls just on the other side of normal. No demons force their way into a teenager's body, or the other way around if your name is Guts. But for the most part, everything seems perfectly normal. Or is it? You see, what surprised me more than anything wasn't just the fact that Boichi could move from drawing things that bounce and jiggle like this, but to be able to deliver a masterclass in characterization and intrigue in just a couple of fucking pages. Because by the end of that first chapter, at least one of these thoughts will have gone through your mind. 1. It very much feels that we've learned everything that we could possibly know about Ken's life, his temperament, the values that he holds, what sort of girl is his type. It is more focused on connecting you to Ken as a character and knows that you want to know what happens next. 2. Of all of the options, why did Boichi choose Ken of all people? What makes him so special that 4 men descended from the rooftops quoting fucking Friedrich Nietzsche, begging this man to be their leader? And it's really at this point in the video where it seems like you should be handed your answer on a silver platter and told, here you fucking go. But on this rare occasion, you really don't need it. And I know that sounds really stupid, but you're just going to have to trust me on this one. Okay? Moving on, because as far as I can see, when a series mainly revolves around a man doing shit like this or this, it becomes really easy for me just sitting here to say that you get everything at face value. Ken fights an opponent, they either get crazier, hornier or saucier in each arc, and Ken, or his penis, literally rise to meet the challenge. And part of you probably thinks that this is merely the setup to some sort of shitty joke. But in reality, the way in which this man's escapades are set up have got to be some of the most insane and unorthodox things that I have ever read in a fucking manga. Reading this gave me a true understanding of why Scamboli constantly teases making a video on this series. He's only really done it twice though. And it really comes down to how Boichi has this really strange and quite fucked up ability to juxtapose Ken's lighthearted and loving nature with what can only be truly described as some of the most gruesome things to be done to a person. Like here for instance, Ken is trying to perform a good deed and save his favorite prostitute. Only within the span of a few pages, we then see somebody's asshole be used to polish a baseball bat. And it's really these sort of scenes within a manga that make you think, what the fuck have I just witnessed? So, with so much escalating sex and violence, it becomes very easy to believe every opinion that you see online, that this is a shallow story that Boichi cannot write. And while the main plot of the story once again revolves around a man fighting and fucking, it is very easy to see why, and I'm not selling this at all, am I? But I remember when I finished the first couple of chapters, it suddenly dawned on me that this series is less about the initial objective of Ken trying to get his fucking dick wet, and more so a story about men, and not just one man, but multiple men coming together and fighting for everything that they want to protect and believe in. All while this story centers around one of the most likable characters in manga, with this fucking infectious charisma and willpower and ability to lead and inspire those around him, culminating in this huge orchestral journey of epicness. And if that doesn't excite you, here's Scamboli saying it in less words.
The journey to get there is next level. This is the shit that'll have you working out in the gym for the next couple of months.
And I think by the time that you realize what this tale embodies, you also understand why Boichi would create a story this fucking brilliantly bizarre. 1. He wants to inspire you to get off your ass and do some fucking push-ups. 2. He is living vicariously through Ken, and this is the sort of action-filled life he has always dreamt of. 3. Titties. And 4. It all just looks fucking cool. This is the part where I actually talk about the art in fully form rather than just saying the word this, and this over and over and over. One thing I can never seem to appreciate enough is just how much effort that this man puts into his fucking art. It's one thing to start out as one of the best artists around, but it's another to be able to constantly improve on that in every single fucking chapter. Now, that is quite a big statement. So you're probably wondering, just how good is it? Look here, this is how things started out. For most people, they would say, holy shit, that is some of the most good art of all time, and they would be really happy in seeing it. Now, we're simply going to skip ahead 90 chapters, and all of a sudden, you're being fed pages that are entirely made up of these black and white watercolor paintings. There truly comes a point in this story where everything is so expressive and so raw and so well drawn that having a text bubble on the page almost takes away from the trembolone adult power in this this man's art. Because sir, panels like this, or maybe, okay, maybe this one does? But most of these don't really require any rhyme or reason to explain what the fuck is going on inside of them. For example, visually, you can see Ken becoming bigger and stronger as the story progresses and shit coincidentally gets bigger and harder. That wasn't a dick joke, but it sure as fuck sounded like one. So, with Boichi obviously having such a proclivity for visual storytelling, this ultimately ties back to a lot of people saying that Boichi writing bad, that his use of sex and violence to elicit an emotional response in the reader is a sign of poor writing, that maybe he doesn't put too much thought into what he's writing as long as what he's drawing can look fucking cool. Which, drumroll please, is entirely supported by the fact that after Sun Ken Rock finished serializing, he released a fifth manga named Origin, where Boichi somehow manages to take a samurai sword wielding, Yakuza fighting Terminator and has him live an honest life as a salaryman, but in true Boichi fashion also features encounters and scenarios like this, and also this, because that makes sense. And weirdly enough, Scamboli was also right about this manga, and for anyone out there that has read all 87 chapters of Origin, I really feel your pain. And the reason I mention this manga is to just highlight what truly happens when Boichi actually writes badly, because aside from the pretty pictures and essentially watching T2 trying to assimilate into fucking Dunder Mifflin, I can't find anything that is in any way redeeming about this manga whatsoever. And the thing is, I don't quite know which straw it was that broke the camel's back. Maybe it had something to do with this guy and his sex robots, how one-dimensional all the characters feel, how every line of dialogue feels like it was written by a fucking AI. Reading this manga truly felt like I was experiencing the most elaborate hentai plot that Boichi just kept hidden for all of these years, and in the interest of just saving everyone time here, this manga is truly the definition of one of the manga ever made. It just happens to be made by Boichi, which actually helps us out a lot, because it's only in finishing this video and trying out a lot more of his content and other materials that I realized that the reason for Boichi's writing being the way that it is literally comes down to him having to raise the stakes and just one-up whatever he did previously. Either artistically, emotionally, or narratively, there almost seems to be this constant need for him to leave an impression on whoever the fuck is reading his pieces. It's like everything needs to finish in this huge crescendo or culminate in one big final moment. That, sir, is not a hentai reference. This would ultimately be the reason behind the ending of Sun Ken Rock being so fucking controversial, all while also justifying exactly why Boichi ended everything the way that he did. Because when you've created a series so over the top, how could you possibly end it the way everybody expects it to go? Which I'm just gonna hypothesize maybe due to him having an overexposure to a certain type of media. So to answer the question, is Boichi writing bad? Yes, the hentai man is not a narrative genius. So naturally one would then assume, okay, that must mean that Sun Ken Rock is thus bad. And that my answer would be no, but I can't exactly put my finger on what that reason is, because it comes somewhere between the somewhat realistic Rags to Riches storyline and Ken just being Ken, and part of me doesn't exactly want to figure out what that reason is. Maybe I just happen to fit the target demographic, but for some strange reason behind all of this, inside this manga there exists something that just truly allows it to hit differently. However, it's still written by Boichi, so yes, there may be too much unnecessary titty. Yeah, he may portray female characters in a way that society doesn't exactly agree with these days, and he may have created one of the most controversial endings to ever grace the pages of a manga. But did this manga make me feel things I thought I could never feel from a series ever again? You're goddamn right, sir. I can't exactly keep it a secret that this has become one of my favorite manga. For some it is something like a Berserk or maybe a Chainsaw Man or one of the 9 JoJo's, but for me it is a really weird and fucked up series known as Sun Ken Rock. And let me explain why. Because every fucking time I go online and see Reddit post after Reddit post critiquing the series, it makes me think I might have a downright horrendous taste in manga. But weirdly enough, it's due to all of these imperfections and just sheer ridiculousness that I love this series. Because at no point does the story, Ken or Boichi, go out of their way to become something that they are not. At no point did it feel generic or very similar to something that I had read before. And as simple and straightforward as the story is, you can truly consume it in many different ways. For some it is dumb fun, for some it is motivational, for some it's another throwaway series, a tragedy, maybe even hentai. And looking back at everything that characterizes this series in just as a weird and oddly poetic way, this manga also represents every aspect of Boichi as a creator, a culmination of all of his life's work and all of his flaws long before he would ever make a name for himself, which for some fucking strange reason to me just makes everything feel that bit more personal. Because I know that for me and a lot of other people, the enjoyment that we get from these series comes from seeing something wild and unique that someone has strived to cultivate through years of loneliness and effort, which is also one, the reason I don't read any isekai, and two, why your favorite manga may not exactly be the best manga, but to you, it's everything. And it's for that sort of reason that when it comes to Son Ken Rock, there's just something about Ken's journey that speaks to me like no other series could. And I think it largely comes down to the reason that Ken isn't just Boichi's most popular character, but also a part of who Boichi and just about every man on the planet has at one stage dreamed of being. Someone with power, muscles, and notoriety, but most of all, someone who is respected and needed by those around him. And while most of the manga doesn't necessarily convey that to you directly into your brain, it's something that over the past year has impacted my life for the better. And I know Scamboli may be right about the ending, but this manga single-handedly relit my interest in the entire medium as a whole. So looking back at this series, I don't see a source of media that is simply dumb fun with very, very pretty pictures, but a series that can inadvertently provide people with the mindset needed to live a better life. If that's how you read it. But regardless of the medium you choose, I think for somebody to be capable of creating something that inspires people to do better is one of the coolest things any creator could possibly achieve in their career, and to say thank you.